Hey everybody, welcome back to Cast Album Chat with Tyler. I don't know about y'all, but I am already feeling the heat, literally. This week, I think we get to 94 degrees here in Texas, 94 Fahrenheit, I think that's about 34 centigrade. So it's getting pretty warm. And I thought I would remedy that by talking about cast albums from one of my favorite countries, that would be Iceland. I do have to send a little shout out to my friend Robert, who I think has the largest collection of Icelandic cast recordings ever. I mean, he's got some really rare stuff. So I probably should have consulted him on this, but maybe I could do a follow-up a little bit later. So today I'm going to talk about basically all of the cast recordings that we have of musicals that have come out of Iceland. So today our video is called, let me read it here, Iceland, You Didn't Have to Go That Hard. I wanted to start this video off with a little bit of context, just kind of the size of the nation of Iceland. So I have a few population stats here, if you don't mind the numbers. Iceland altogether has 377,386 inhabitants, more or less, depending on the day. And then there is the capital of Reykjavik, which has about 140,000 inhabitants. The Reykjavik metro area has about 240,000. There are other cities around there that make up this Reykjavik sort of metro area, but it's much smaller than even mid-sized countries and mid-sized cities in other countries. So there is kind of a second capital in the north called Akureyri, and they have 18,191 inhabitants. So if you're looking at the population of Iceland and thinking, oh, I'm probably not going to put out very much as far as musical theater is concerned, or even cast albums are concerned, you are very wrong. They definitely have a larger output than you would believe for the number of people that live in the country. They have a lot of theater companies. So I kind of wanted to start a little bit with the history of musical theater in Iceland and then get into the cast recordings. Iceland didn't really take off with musical theater until much later than in other countries. Of course, we know Germany, the Netherlands has had musical theater productions at least going back to the 60s, if not before. Spain and Mexico obviously have a large tradition. Even Japan, Australia, of course, you know, if we're talking about overseas, from an American standpoint, those are the countries that really pop out to me as having a long history. Iceland, not so much. The thing about Iceland is that most people probably speak English to a much higher level than most other countries because there are so few people that speak Icelandic. Obviously, with only 377,000 people in the country, there are not going to be a lot of people that speak Icelandic. So a lot of them already speak English. Many of them speak Danish as well, and probably many other foreign languages. So, you know, there's that kind of age-old question of, do you translate something? Do you keep it in English? It does seem that, luckily for us, that like listening to show tunes in foreign languages for us, they did decide kind of from the very beginning that they were going to be doing most of their musicals in Icelandic. And the first example I could find was actually Kiss Me Kate back in 1958. I believe it was produced in the National Theatre of Iceland. I will not try to pronounce the name because it is a big, long word that is scary to me. So I'll put it down here at the bottom so that you can see what it looks like, and then maybe watch some videos and hear an Icelandic person pronounce the name of the theater. But the National Theatre of Iceland set up this production. And the interesting thing is that the actress that came over to play Lily/Kate was Ulla Salert from Sweden. She had already done the Swedish production. We're lucky to have a couple of recordings of her singing some of the tracks in Swedish. Unfortunately, we have nothing in Icelandic, and I couldn't find a lot of information. do believe at some point I read that she kind of did a hybrid of Swedish and maybe some Icelandic, but I think she probably spoke mostly in Swedish when she was doing this production. So I have no idea what that looks like exactly, or what it sounded like, but I think it's fascinating that that's kind of the first example that I could find of musical theater in Iceland. A little bit later on, and this is why I think that, I've spoken about it before, why cast recordings are so important. If there is no cast recording, there's not going to be a really concrete piece of history floating around out there so people know that a certain production existed. So from 1958 all the way to 1971, I'm sure there were other productions. I just can't find any information on them, especially pictures. But I did find a production of Hair in 1971 in a town which is in the Reykjavik metro, Kópavogur. And I'll throw up some pictures here. I wish they had done a recording. There was a local rock band, Natura, I think was the name, that was the band for the production. And it was kind of played out in the country, sort of. It was not a very big town. And luckily I found the information, but unluckily, I believe that the theater burnt down. I don't know if it was during the run or a little bit after the run, but I think that it affected it for sure. That same band later went to play the Reykjavik production of Jesus Christ Superstar in 1973 at the Iðnó Theater, I think is what it's called. It's not actually a theater. It's more of an event space that still exists there. I believe it's by the Alþingi City Hall, I believe, around the kind of central lake there in the middle of Reykjavik. And so there are examples of musical theater well before cast recordings started to show up, but I wanted to give you an idea of what musical theater looked like before we started getting into the recordings. Fittingly enough, the first cast album that I could find from Iceland is of an Icelandic musical. It's based on a saga from Iceland, so kind of their folklore and the stories that they have. It's called Grettir, and it's actually really, really cool. It's a rock musical, and it kind of plays very fast and loose with the story, from what I understand. And so, unfortunately, I can't play any clips of this because I do believe that this is on iTunes. But the structure of the music is actually quite fantastic. It's not at all what I expected it to be. And this is a fun one to listen to. The only downside for someone that doesn't speak Icelandic, like myself, is I have no idea what's happening, honestly. So I enjoy the music a lot, but I can't follow along with the story very much. This premiered in 1980 at the National Theater, and it was an original production by them. It seems like this show has at least played one more time at the newer theater, kind of the Reykjavik City Theater is what I would call it, the Borgarleikhús. And they did a later production here. It's in a digipack, and I'll do a whole other video about how much I hate digipacks because they get damaged so easily. But yes, they did a revival at the Borgarleikhús in 2007, I believe. That's what it says on the copyright date here. So definitely find both of these. They're both well produced. And kind of have a different feel to them, but I feel like they're companion pieces to each other. So this is the place to start with. If you want to start with Icelandic show tunes, why not start with an Icelandic musical? Grettir. At the moment, I'm trying to figure out how to structure this video exactly. I was going to do it chronologically, but I found out that there are some groupings of recordings that I wanted to put together, and I knew I would throw myself off because the heat is scrambling my brain. So the next cast recording I could find was from 1985. It's of The Little Shop of Horrors. I will show you the vinyl that I got when I was in Iceland. It's a really beautiful copy here. And this is, I believe this was from the Gamla Bio. I don't know what the theater company was. It says Gamla Bio Icelandic Opera. So I don't know if this was a production of the Icelandic opera or not. It's not sung operatically. It's very much in keeping with the original production of Little Shop of Horrors. And the Gamla Bio, the old opera house in Reykjavik, is not very big. So it seems like it would be a fitting sized theater for the show. Not a lot of information here, and I haven't seen I don't know that I've seen any pictures from this production, but this is a really, really solid cast recording of the show. What I will say is that with other countries, Korea and Japan actually come to mind a lot. They kind of had to grow into doing musical theater. And what I mean is that I think that the singers here are really fantastic, but as you will see with other recordings, you'll see them getting more and more comfortable with how to sing these styles. What is musical theater to them? How do they interpret it? So, I'll talk about some more recordings of Little Shop of Horrors that have come from Iceland. But this is the original Reykjavik recording from 1985. That's the vinyl. I've also got the CD here from the HMI label. This was produced out of Japan. We don't actually get much more information on this packaging either. There are no pictures. And actually, the back of the liner notes here it's just a reproduction of the back of the vinyl itself. So this is a recording that I go back to quite a bit because I like to hear the roots of Icelandic cast recordings. But as you'll see, it will grow quite a bit, pun intended. Thank you very much. I'll be here all week. I already started talking about Little Shop of Horrors, so I think I'm going to continue talking about Little Shop of Horrors. There are some shows in Iceland that have been very popular over the years. I already spoke about Grettir, at least having one revival. And it seems like Iceland really tends to revive shows that have smaller bands, not even orchestras. So they're easy to set up, even though maybe technically they could be difficult in some ways. But Little Shop is one of those shows that has been revived a lot and recorded a lot in Iceland. You wouldn't guess it by how recently they started doing musical theater or the population of the country, but there are actually 4, I would say, I'll get into the little caveat later, 4 cast recordings of Little Shop of Horrors from Iceland. So the next one after the 1985 original production at the Borgarleikhús, produced by the Leikfélag Reykjavíkur. So I guess that would be the Reykjavik. It's not Drama Society. I don't know what it is exactly, but the acting troupe. The 1999 cast recording. This one is it's not my favorite, but it's I like them all for different reasons, and this one really is fantastic. This is the first one that I actually was able to find, and I had to rebuy it because I remember this beautiful green disc. I had it in college, and somehow my roommate got a Skittle on it, and the Skittle melted on it, and my life flashed before my eyes, but I was lucky to find it again. We do get some more pictures here, but yeah, definitely find this one if you can. I will say this one has fewer tracks on it than a normal CD. This one only has 13, so you get the majority of the score, but you don't get all of the songs. Later on, there was a university in a town, which is in the Reykjavik metro area. Garðabæ, I think is how you pronounce it. Sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. But in 2004, their student association, part of I would assume the School of Drama and Music possibly, set up this production. This one is actually very hard to find. You might be able to find it on Sound of Music Shop through Germany. This one does only have 8 tracks, so it has less than the Reykjavik Revival recording, but this one is surprisingly strong. They're all kids, which is not so much of a distraction. I honestly can't remember if Mushnik is on this recording very much, so I don't remember him all that much. The plant here is played by a female student, and she is wonderful. She has so much energy, and it's also nice to hear Seymour and Audrey, who have different names in Iceland. I'm trying to remember their names here. Baldur is Seymour, and Audur is Audrey. So they're young actors, full of energy, and actually they have some really great voices. This might be the best sung Audrey out of Iceland. So if you can find this one, check it out. I think this one might be streaming online. I'm not sure if it's on Apple or not, but it's pretty cool to have the CD. So see if you can find this. Like I said, you'll be able to find it probably through Sound of Music Shop for a high price for the number of tracks, but it's a really cool one to have. The last one that I have, and I have to look behind me because I always forget the year, 2006 production. This one started in Akureyri, which is in the north, the little town of 18,000 people. It was a co-production between the Leikfélag Akureyrar and the Icelandic opera. So this one went back to, it started up there in, I cannot remember the name of the venue that they have. It's not the new venue they have in Akureyri, it's an older one. I'll put the name down here. It played there, and then it moved to the Gamla Bio at the Icelandic opera in Reykjavik. This one, the arrangements on this one are killer. And this is probably this might be my go-to, I would say. We have another female plant. I still cannot pronounce her name, but the actress that played Evita, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, it plays the plant here, and she's fantastic. So you can find this one as well. I think I found this one on Discogs, so double check there. So this is the Akureyri/Reykjavik 2006 cast recording of Little Shop of Horrors. Talking about musicals that are very popular in Iceland, for some reason, Grease is really big there. Actually, after the movie, I think Grease is really popular everywhere. So, over the last 46 years, it's been produced anywhere from, United States, Iceland, Africa, you name it, it's been there. So there are actually 3 recordings. I only have 2. I like Grease, but there's really only so much of it I can take, even in foreign languages. I've heard the 1998 recording from Reykjavik. I believe that was from the Reykjavik City Theatre, the Borgarleikhúsið. But I do not have that one. It's a solid recording. There's nothing really kind of that sticks out about it to me, honestly. The one that does stick out to me is the 2003 recording. And I'm trying to figure out where this one was produced. It was probably Borgarleikhús as well. So this is the 2003 recording, and as you can tell, it looks a little bit more modern. And when you listen to it, the orchestrations, the arrangements, musical arrangements, are definitely modernized. And it gives it a lot of energy. If you're gonna do Grease, do something different with it. That is something that Iceland kind of became known for a little while, is kind of putting a different spin on shows. And there's no different, I would say. I wish I had a little bit more information on this. I think I did a deep dive at one point. It just didn't stick because Grease is not my favorite. But kind of moving on, I believe it was the second time that I went to Iceland. I found the 2009 cast recording here. This one is a little bit more standard. It does only have 11 tracks on it. If you've seen Grease, there are a ton of songs in it. But this is kind of the very, very, very highlights. But it is a very strong cast, but this one sounds a little bit more traditional. Of course, it has the songs from the movie, just like the other 2 recordings. So if you're a fan of Grease and you want to hear a little bit of Icelandic musical theater, can't go wrong here. So there's the 1998, 2003, and 2009 recording of Grease. Another rock musical, which was very popular and still is very popular in Iceland, is Hair. I was talking about the 1971 production before and how heartbroken I am that there was no cast recording of that production. I do feel that we're lucky that we have 4 cast recordings of Hair from Iceland. The first one, strangely enough, I don't have. It's probably the easiest one to find. It's from Reykjavik, 1994. Something I will say about these, I think all of these recordings is they also take after the movie. Something I never really liked about the movie of Hair is it kind of takes out half the score. And you get a bit more of like a 70s funk vibe as opposed to a late 60s hippie vibe. So while I do like these recordings a lot, they're kind of, the arrangements are so futzed with that I don't get that hippie feeling, which is why I'm sad we didn't get the 1971 version, because obviously that was before the movie came out, and it probably would have been a purer version of what Hair is. I would love to see them produce the show again in the future in its original form, with its original orchestrations or arrangements. I say orchestrations for all of these because most musicals will have some semblance of an orchestra, but most of these are going to be rock musicals with bands. Anyway, so there's the 1994 recording. Then the same group that did the mini recording of Little Shop of Horrors from Garðabæ, the student organization at the university there, came up with their own version. This was from 2002, I believe. Yes, 2002. And has the same arrangements basically as the 94 production. I think some people that were in the 1994 production may have helped with this, and they went from this version to a later version that I'll talk about in a second. But this one is just as strong as the Little Shop of Horrors recording. I don't know how they have so much talent. They're such young people, but the characters in here are young, so it's nice to hear that exuberance coming from them, and it really comes across on disc. Once again, this one only has 9 tracks on it, so it's a very, very, very small amount of highlights for the show, but you might be able to find this one. I found this on Discogs, but it also may pop up at Sound of Music Shop. The next recording I have of Hair is from 2004. So you can tell it looks a little bit more modern here. I don't know exactly what setting, what the physical production looked like very much. There are a few pictures out there of this production, but in general, the sound of it actually sounds quite a bit like the other Icelandic cast recordings of the show, just because of those 70s musical arrangements. The one thing I will say that sticks out for me on this recording is that there's a man singing Frank Mills. It's a song that I've always loved. Sad that I didn't get to sing it when I did a production of it back in the day, but of course that was sung by, I think it's Chrissy. So, if you ever wanted to hear Frank Mills sung by a man in Icelandic, this is your recording right here in 2004. There was another one that came out in 2011, and I'm still trying to track it down. Unlike the 94 recording, I haven't seen it for sale anywhere, although I know that Robert has it, so it does exist. I've heard some clips from it, and it might actually be the strongest recording from Iceland, but I'd have to give it another listen just to speak truthfully on that. So I don't know. But so we're kind of racking up the numbers here. We have Grease with 3 recordings, Hair with 4, Little Shop of Horrors with 4. I wonder if there's another show that has more recordings. Of course there is. And it's the Rocky Horror Show. And I have to apologize for my last video. When I was editing, I found out that I called it Rocky Horror Picture Show, which broke my heart. Rocky Horror Show was the first professional musical that I ever did, and I was always very adamant about calling it Rocky Horror Show. So my apologies on that one. But Rocky Horror Show has 5 recordings from Iceland. So this is... take your pick. I mean, I don't know. I guess you just start from the original version that they did in 1991. This is also a group of students that put on this production. Interestingly enough, the Frankenfurter from this recording, Paul Oscar, he's a pop star in Iceland. I believe he sang for Eurovision, which we just had this last weekend. And this is a great recording. It has most of the tracks from the show, and I'll throw up a few more pictures here. But this is a great place to start. This is a fantastic recording of Rocky Horror Show from 1991, and this is from Reykjavik. The second version was from 1995, and I believe it's from a group called Flugfélagið Loftur, and I believe that is in reference to the Loft Theater. I think that the 2004 version of Hair, and maybe one of those middle versions of Grease there, was also at the Loftur Theater, which I don't believe has productions anymore. But this almost reminds me, if you've ever heard it, of the early 90s Australian recording of Rocky Horror Show. The arrangements are definitely different, more different than anything you've heard. Well, I don't know. There are a few rearrangements of Rocky Horror Show, but this one is it's a good recording. It's not that difficult to find. It has a few less tracks on it. I think this one's at 16, and the last one is the Time Warp remix. So if you want to get some good 90s goodness here, this is the 1995 version of Rocky Horror Show from Reykjavik. Going back to everybody's favorite university theater group in Gardavaj. This was their last recording. No, I apologize. This was their middle recording. Hair came out in 2002, Rocky Horror Show in 2003, Little Shop of Horrors in 2004. So this was their middle production. Once again, you just get a few tracks. There are 8 tracks on this recording. But again, it's pretty good. You know, I mean, I wish that they had recorded more. You know, we only get a few tracks from each of them, but the students are so fantastically talented that I wish there were more on disc. But you know, if you can find this one, definitely do. I think I found this one on eBay. And little word of warning here, if anybody else has this recording, maybe they can tell me. This isn't exactly what I would call a CDR, but it's not, you know, kind of a pressed CD. So, you know, it's very professionally put together. All of this is definitely professionally printed, even though I will say that the clip art that we have here, I think these are just clip art lips from like Microsoft 95, and then the lips from the movie. But yeah, so if you can find this one, definitely grab it. But I don't know that it would be worth $100. I've seen it go for about $100 before, so choose wisely. The next production, and I am not going to have the right year on this. I believe it's 2000 and let's take a shot in the dark. Let's say 2011. I don't know. This is 2010. Sorry. This is from Akureyri in the north. This is from the Lake Filag Akureyrar, and I want to say that they did this one in their new space in the Hof building. This recording of Rocky Horror Show from Iceland is my go-to. And I would probably go as far to say as this is the best Icelandic recording ever of any show. This one's harder to find as well. You know, it was only in print for a short while the show was in the theater in Akureyri. I don't think this one went to Reykjavik, but if you can find this one, the pictures are cool, the arrangements are cool, the cast is fantastic. So you're not going to find a better recording of Rocky Horror Show from Iceland, even though all of them are fantastic. When I tell you I'm flying by the seat of my pants, I mean I'm flying by the seat of my pants, because I should look at the years and theaters of these recordings before I hit play, but I'm too lazy to do that, so let's just keep going. The last recording of Rocky Horror Show from Iceland was from 2018, and it's from the Borgarleikhúsið again. That's the Reykjavik City Theater. It's the CD, once again, it's a digipack. Not a fan of the digipack. But this is a really slickly produced production. And once again, Paul Oscar is Frank. So, you know, almost 30 years later, a little bit less than 30 years later, he came back to play the role. This looks like a fun production. And I am such a nerd that I had to get the vinyl. So there's a 1 CD version and this beautifully produced vinyl here. You get all your lyrics here as well in the middle, some pictures in the back, and the really cool part about this, let me put this down safely here, is that the discs are red. So let me pull this out for you here. This is what the disc 1 looks like. There are actually 2 discs on this one on vinyl because it of course can fit less. So if you can find this one, I think this is still available in a lot of places, and it's probably streaming as well. But this is the 2018 version from Reykjavik, and so if you can find this one, this is, you know, this is really top tier Rocky Horror, but if you can only go with one, this one right here, 2010 Akureyri. Take your pick. Whew. Well, who knew I could be so long-winded about Icelandic recordings of musicals? Not quite done yet. I have 2 little bunches left that I wanted to talk about. Those that don't belong to any of the other more produced shows, and that were produced by the Borgarleikhús or Borgarleikhúsið in Reykjavik. These 3 recordings here, I'm not gonna make the joke. I'm gonna make the joke. Let's start from the beginning, the very beginning, a very good place to start. Sungvasæður, which is Sound of Music. I was lucky enough to see this production in 2009. I just coincided with, I had a layover there for about one night I think, and it was playing, so I got a ticket to go see it. Not the biggest fan of Sound of Music. It's not as epic as some of the other Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals, but I decided, when else am I going to be able to see a musical in Icelandic? So I went to go see it, and I was pleasantly surprised. The band, again, not really an orchestra, but the band for this is pretty good. And they include an overture on this. Usually it starts with the nuns choir singing, but this starts with the overture. Cast is uniformly great, and the production was really, really wonderful. It's not a very large space. I think it's less than or right at 500 seats for their biggest theater. I think they have a couple of different stages in the building itself, which is a really, really cool shape. But this one, Sung the Sædir, is the first musical that I got to see in Icelandic, and it's always very special to me, so I made sure to get this one. I don't think I got this one at the theater. I think I ordered it, maybe I ordered it before I went. I cannot remember. But if you can find this one's not as difficult to find. I believe it's on Discogs. Next one I wanted to mention, I'll say one of my least favorite, because I don't even think of this as a musical, because it's generally based on the movie, is Wizard of Oz. As you can tell, the design for this is very similar, the physical design of the cover and everything. But you know, there are actually not that many songs that are in the movie, so they have a few kind of jazz standards in here as well. You'll see some of the cast members also repeating, but you know, if you can find this one, definitely grab it. Especially if you're a fan of Wizard of Oz. The cast is great, the band is great, but you know, I just don't listen to this one very much because it's not my favorite musical on the face of the earth. And finally, the last recording that I have from Borgarleikhús is Mary Poppins. You can find this one. This one pops up from time to time. Might be streaming, not 100% sure. It's another digipack, which I'm not very excited about. But this is once again, a very solid production and cast recording. There are only 16 tracks on this. I know that a general Mary Poppins cast recording will have a little bit more. So there are a few numbers that are missing here. Being Mrs. Banks reprise is the one that I kind of miss. But I just think it's fascinating that in a country with so few people, they can do a musical like Mary Poppins, which doesn't seem like it's all that difficult. But you know, with the type of singing, the tap dancing, it's pretty impressive. And also the children that are part of the cast are wonderful as well. So if you can find this, definitely grab it. Unfortunately, I will say there's not a cast recording of Mamma Mia from Iceland. I'm a big Mamma Mia fan. And I was lucky enough to go see that production. I believe it was in 2016. There is a single that I remember when I was taking a taxi with my partner to the theater to see the show, was playing on the radio in the taxi. So SOS, they definitely recorded, and it might be available somewhere on YouTube. I can't remember exactly where I found it, but I know I have it saved somewhere. So, you know, if you can find that one, it's, you know, kind of fun to listen to Mamma Mia in Icelandic. It was a cute production. I really enjoyed it a lot. Have some really great memories of seeing it. Kind of followed the movie a little bit closer than I would like it to have. I think they took out Name of the Game, and then there's some little excisions in the overture and the entr'acte. But I loved it. What can I say? I'm a sucker for Mamma Mia, and I'm a sucker for Icelandic musical theater. And you're in the final stretch. So I only have 4 more recordings to talk about. I don't know how long this video is gonna be, but I couldn't figure out necessarily how to bunch these together. They're just kind of my rando recordings. That being said, they're some of my favorites, so not necessarily saving the best for last, but not the worst either. So Jesus Christ Superstar, as I said, premiered in 1973 in Iceland, but we didn't get a recording of it till 1995. This was from the Leikfélag Reykjavíkur at the Borgarleikhús. So it's it was a Reykjavik production at the Borgarleikhús, the Reykjavik City Theater. There are no pictures in here, but it's very colorful. And it's a pretty straightforward recording. Orchestra sounds great. The singers are fantastic. Yeah, I want to do a video of musicals that, I don't want to say they haven't aged well, just they kind of lose their power the further away they get from the original production and the original sound. And I think that Superstar is one of the shows, much like Hair, that's kind of been watered down recently. You get new arrangements, and it just doesn't sound like what it is supposed to sound like in my brain anyway. But this is not the case with this production. The 1995 Reykjavik production sounds very standard. The singers are fantastic. So yeah, if you want to check it out, I believe I found this one on Discogs. It used to be a little bit more difficult to find, and you might actually be able to find it streaming. I think I found it streaming on iTunes the other day at least. So check this one out. This is the 1995 Reykjavik cast recording of Jesus Christ Superstar, here just called Superstar. Following up with the only other Andrew Lloyd Webber recording out of Iceland, as far as I know, is Evita. This is another one that was really hard to find for a long time, but you'll see it kind of popping up here and there, especially on Discogs. It's from 1997, and it was produced at the Gamla Bio for the Icelandic Opera. Again, I don't think this was a production of the Icelandic Opera, although they have been known to do, they certainly did Sweeney Todd before. I have a program of it somewhere floating around there that kind of came out probably later than this. I think it was in college. I'm not going to tell you what year. You could do your own research on that. But yeah, so this is very much a highlights recording. 13 tracks with You Must Love Me. This came out right after the movie. So it's not a lot of music from the score, but the cast is universally great. The arrangements are very much like the movie. But the interesting thing, and I will try to pronounce her name, and I will pronounce it incorrectly, but Andrea Guðfadóttir plays Eva on this recording. And then you'll find her also on the Akureyri version playing of Little Shop of Horrors, playing the plant. And she's also in the Akureyri recording of Rocky Horror Show as Columbia, and she turns that one on its ear. I think she's probably I don't want to say the weakest. She's great on this recording, but maybe least strong on this recording. But it's a really strong one. So if you can find this one, this is the 1997 Reykjavik cast recording of Evita. I know I said that the Akureyri cast recording of Rocky Horror Show is the best cast recording out of Iceland, but probably the one that is closest to my heart. Not being a Rent head, I will say the 1999 Reykjavik production of Rent from the National Theatre of Iceland is really cool. Some of the musical arrangements are very similar to the original production, and then you get some revisionist versions come out later. Especially, I'm trying to think of Out Tonight, Today for You. The sound is I would say kind of 90s techno pop. And it sounds really cool. This is streaming, and you can find it from time to time online. But you know, the cast, you'll see a lot of these names pop up from one recording to the next. But you know, it's a cast of legends. Again, I'm not going to pronounce their names because I'm terrible at Icelandic names. But if you can find this one, definitely find this. I got this one back in college. Everybody else was listening to the original Broadway cast recording, and of course, I was listening to the original Reykjavik cast recording from 1999. And at the very last, we have the 2005 Reykjavik cast recording of Cabaret. No, your eyes are not deceiving you. This is the worst cover you've ever seen. Oh, second worst cover after the Hungarian version of Cabaret that you have ever seen. It actually looks like somebody did one of those like vinyl printings on a t-shirt in high school, and they took a picture of it and put it on the CD. Something I don't really understand. There are a few pictures in this CD here that probably would have done a lot better at giving you an idea of what the production was like. This one, being 2005, obviously it came out after the Sam Mendes production, and follows that script very closely. And there are a lot of similarities. Two ladies, obviously they're, the two ladies are a man and a woman. I think the structure of Willkommen is very much like the revival production. And I will say in some parts, much like the recent London revival recording that just came out a couple of years ago, or last year maybe, you can tell that they had listened to the 1998 Broadway cast recording. Especially the MC. I'll say Sally comes out a little bit ahead on this recording. Maybe I was expecting a little bit more. But if you can find this one, I didn't know this existed till a few months ago. I just randomly found it. I think it was on eBay, and I just snatched it up. And I think that it's shown up on Discogs again. So this is not as rare as I thought it was for having just recently found out about it. But this is this might be my newest acquisition as far as Icelandic cast recordings go. So this is the 2005 cast recording of Cabaret, and this also played at the Icelandic Opera, although I don't think it was a production of the Icelandic Opera. Well, I wish I could say that's all, but that was a lot. I'm sorry for just blowing your wig back for I don't know how many minutes talking about Icelandic cast recordings, but who else was gonna do it? For real. So, like I said before, I know that the weather is getting hot wherever you live. So if you want to cool things down, definitely take a look at these recordings from Iceland. For the small population they have immense talent. And I think that these cast recordings are very indicative of the talent that they have in this little tiny island nation. So while you're at it, why don't you just go, pop on your iTunes, find Rent from 1999 in Reykjavik, and rock out. Thank you so much for joining me again. Again, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.